Welcome to the fourth session of the Chopping Block.
Welcome.
Ben Deaver here,
Dave Gelder.
on staff at Tallgrass Community Church in Manhattan, Kansas. We're excited to bring this Chopping Block session to you. So, of course, the Chopping Block are the things that got cut from our sermon. So, Dave, this last Sunday, spoke on Luke 6, Life in the Upside Down Kingdom, big javelin about loving our enemies. And there's several pages here that were on his chopping block. So we're literally bringing to you our
That's right.
figurative chopping block.
Yeah, that's right. This will be the first of the chopping block that's like exactly what we had thought of when we first conceived of it. We'll see how it goes.
So we're filming this one here in the College Heights Baptist Church meeting space, and so a little bit of change of scenery as well. So let's get down to it.
That's right. So this one may be a little bit more tied to my notes, looking at things, a little bit less polished, but hopefully it'll be still value add. Cool?
Great.
So kind of the theme of what we're going to talk about is the weight. So what about this? Questions. How do we really flesh out what we talked about on Sunday, which was Jesus' command, his startling command that his followers should love their enemies. Mm-hmm. And so the first question, I've got 6 questions we're going to address that I think folks have communicated to me and would follow from this. So the first one, wait, what does it really look like to love our enemies? Jesus didn't answer the question. And so I think that's a fair one. And we kind of ended with this one on Sunday. Jesus is, in this sermon, he kind of uses this Jewish rhetorical style where rather than answering all the specifics, so how, so what, all of the different scenarios, he kind of goes after forming the heart of a thing. And the trust and the hope is that if the heart gets formed, as a heart that learns to love our enemies, then it'll kind of work its way out in situation to situation. So that's a little bit frustrating, I think, for us Westerners, because I want to know the answer.
Mm-hmm. So, Dave, are you saying that the wisdom literature doesn't give you the exact ways in which to behave in every specific situation, but rather begins to shape, be transformed by the renewing of our minds, our heart set, so that when we face real-life situations, we will be able to engage with wisdom. Yeah,
that's definitely what I think. Cool. Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that. So as you engage with a lot of the parts of Scripture that are written specifically in this way, the Proverbs especially, have this in mind, that what's being sought after is the heart and forming the heart set, oftentimes using very extreme opposites to show what the principle behind what's being talked about. Okay, so we do know some clues. Jesus did in the sermon that we talked about, the Sermon on the Plain in Luke 6. He did talk about, this would look like not judging and condemning others, especially their hearts. Don't judge them as a person. Not talking about being able to judge what's true, but being able to judging people, condemning people. We would give generously, we would forgive recklessly, and help others see truth. So we did get some clues there. There's a lot more clues to what does it look like to live this life in the rest of Scripture, especially in the epistles, the letters in the New Testament. You see the Apostle Paul and others really living this out in the situations of their lives. So those can be helpful. Finally, thought that I had is one of the maybe more brave steps would be as you go through the difficult process of deciding, wait, who is my enemy? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a specific person. Maybe it's a type of person, whether it should or shouldn't be. That's the answer for you. So a next step would be find someone, either that specific person or someone like that, and befriend them. Get to know someone who's like the enemy that you have in your mind.
Pray for them as well.
That's right.
And their success is now your success.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was specifically even addressed by Jesus. So the challenge is get to know someone who's your enemy and actually start to practice loving them. So many of us have enemies in our mind, especially when they're types of people, and we don't actually have any relationships with anyone who's like that. All right, so that's number 1. Are we good on number 1?
Great.
All right, we're going to keep on going.
Let
the next
us know
one.
if we need to keep addressing number 1 in the comments below.
That's right, the comments, that's right. Next, what about abuse? If we're supposed to love our enemies, are you saying that women or men should just stay in abusive situations?
No, do not stay in abusive situations.
That's right. And ultimately, what's important here is to decide, what does it mean to stay in an abusive situation? What does it mean to love? You can still love someone who's abusing you, but you don't have to stay living in the same house or let them continue to abuse you. So this is a very sensitive issue, and it's a way that I think for those who might just take some of the teachings at face value and not think deeply about them, that not see the extremes at play here, that they might think, oh, you're just supposed to be a doormat for everyone and can't protect yourself. But that is of course not the truth, because Jesus is going after forming the heart that loves their enemies. But do not stay with someone who's abusing you. That is an error.
Enabling an abuser is not loving them well.
That's right.
And I think, especially in this situation of marriage, separation, it needs to happen immediately, but that doesn't mean divorce happens immediately necessarily. And so this is why wisdom is so needed, because these situations do get complex and challenging.
Oh, yes. So we would encourage you, if you or someone you know is in an abusive situation, you're wondering what to do, get some perspective, some outside perspective, get some help. We would love to talk with you, others at our church, and help you figure out a good path forward. But we want to get you to safety. We want to get you to a place where you can be okay, and ultimately where whoever is doing the abusing, they can move towards health as well. And you staying in that abusive situation doesn't necessarily help that. That's right. But you can continue to love them. And even as time allows, in appropriate situations with counsel, know what it looks like to move towards them, even in risky love.
And we have some resources on our website for counseling under our website, tallgrass.church, under resources, and there's some counseling resources there as well. And please do call us, being in touch if you need help out of an immediate situation.
That's right. Separation is often exactly what's needed if that's happening. All right, next. All right, I think we covered that one.
Yeah.
If you're in danger, get to safety, get help, for sure. Next, isn't Satan our enemy? Is Jesus saying we're supposed to love Satan?
No, he's not saying that.
No. Although I get where this question comes from. Yeah, Jesus did say love your enemies, and it's very clear that Jesus, and throughout the whole Scripture, Satan is our enemy. So that's an interesting question. One that even might bring some interesting thought experiments. But it's pretty clear we're never called. Jesus never says love Satan.
Right.
Yeah, he never says do good to Satan. It's pretty clear. It seems like what Jesus is talking about as he forms the heart in us is with one another, with other believers, with other even non-believers, folks who are humans.
Yeah.
And I know that one would take even some more conversation to really dive into. And we're going to look into kind of the nature of the spiritual realm and angels and the relationship to humans and stuff like that, hopefully in some subsequent teachings that are coming up.
So weeks.
We're looking forward to that. So this doesn't answer all the questions, but it's a pretty clear no. We're not called to love Satan.
Sermon on the Plain, given to humans, relating in the context of humans, relationship with humans.
Yeah, that's right.
And, for that matter, isn't in the notes, but what about, hunting? Love your enemies doesn't mean we can't hunt. So it's not even addressing our relationship to animals here. Just to humans. That's right.
Okay, maybe more questions raised than it answers, but at least it answers no, we're not ever called to love Satan. Next, number 4, how can I forgive someone if they aren't sorry or if they're not available, like they've died or moved somewhere else? And this one's hard and it's personal. Forgiveness is hard.
Yeah.
So there's a difference in the Scriptures, and I think in our experiences, between forgiveness and reconciliation. So reconciliation, coming back together and forming of a healthy relationship, takes both parties.
Right.
And there's only so much one person can do. You can do everything right on your end, you can forgive, and there may not ever be reconciliation. And that's a tragedy and sad. But it's not the same thing. We can't control that ultimately. Yeah. But we can control our choice to forgive. And so this one's a tough one, because oftentimes this is very difficult when there's pain, and oftentimes great pain and abuse. But it seems like, and this kind of came up in the story kind of quote that I used towards the end of my sermon about Corrie ten Boom, a Holocaust survivor, being faced specifically with having to forgive one of the Nazi war criminals that had abused them, and then later became a Christian, asked for forgiveness. I can't even really imagine what that would be like. But what I'm taking from that was there's at one part where she talked about, her observation was that folks who survived the Holocaust and were able to forgive, even folks, even not specifically able to forgive a person, but were able to forgive in their heart and release that they ended up being able to move on and move towards health, while the folks who weren't able to forgive, who chose not to forgive and held bitterness, they ended up kind of being locked in a prison, essentially, not being able to move on, getting locked into bitterness. So there is an element of forgiveness that's for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if the person you need to forgive maybe has no awareness of their sin, maybe they will never look at it, but you're chewing on a root of bitterness, it's going to cause you much more damage than it's going to cause for them. And so you need to root out that root of bitterness for your own sake. And then reconciliation would just be a blessing beyond that forgiveness. So forgiveness can happen without reconciliation. Of course, we want to work towards reconciliation
whenever
in relationships. I think that it's in Hebrews 12, it talks about the root of bitterness.
Yeah, but even if someone like has died or something like that, or if they have no desire to engage with you and they won't, you still have the ability to, in your own heart, release them from the debt that they have towards you, to forgive, to cancel that debt. And so, of course, that doesn't mean that the wound goes away. Actually, what it means is you're willing to take the wound yourself. It costs you something to forgive. But you can do that on your own, even if that person's not there or is unwilling to engage.
Yeah. And so in those situations, it's not going to look like a conversation with someone. It's going to probably look like sitting down, pen to paper, maybe journaling the ways in which you were hurt, putting words to that, being honest about that hurt and pain, and then applying the gospel to that. Christ has died and debts are paid. There's a reserve for you of the forgiveness you've experienced that you can now offer forgiveness to others, even if they don't receive it.
That's right.
And you got to let go of that stuff.
And the way we can, the reason we can let go is ultimately that God is the ultimate judge, and we trust that He's the one who actually will be able to judge justly, and there is an eternity where justice will be done. Yeah. And so we don't have to feel like we have to hold on to it here. So without that, though, I don't see how you could release people from their debts.
And forgiveness doesn't mean you necessarily forget everything. We talked about the situation, someone being abused. You can forgive the abuser, but still not forget what was done and not put yourself back in that situation as if it never occurred. So there's a distinction, I think, between forgiving and also forgetting. And
that's right. That's good. We could probably say more about it, but
forgiveness is what marks the life of a Christian, is what it should, because of our experience of God's forgiveness. So.
That's right, because we have a God who judges justly, and we don't have to. Yeah, that's good. All right, so 2 more. All right, number 5. How can we balance the call to live this sacrificial, love your enemies lifestyle with self-care and drawing boundaries? I think this is another tough one. But again, at the heart of Jesus' teaching in this passage is love, learning for your heart to be be a heart that can love even your enemies. And so that doesn't necessarily have to conflict with your ability to engage long-term with ministry. So that's what I think of when I think of self-care.
Yeah.
So sometimes the most loving thing you can do, even ultimately for your long-term output of love to others, is to be able to care for yourself, put the oxygen mask on yourself. And so I see how they can, seem in tension, and at times it probably takes some discernment to figure out what the most loving path is. But yeah, there's ultimately with all even the spiritual disciplines and stuff like that, it's in this same line to form a heart that is able to give love to others even more.
Yeah, I think of the command or the exhortation to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so if you have no context or category for That's how good. You actually love yourself, and what God desires for you to be a healthy individual, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, so that you actually have something to offer others. So if you have no margin, if you're not getting good sleep, if you're not taking care of your body, your mind, you won't last very long in ministry.
Yeah, that's right.
And some of the examples that we highlight of great men and women of God, their lives were cut short, and maybe they were martyred. Well, most of us have decades of ministry to look forward to. And so we do need to pace ourselves and think of stewarding everything we have, including our bodies, including our time, and our families as well. If you start sacrificing your time with your children or your spouse, or investing deeply in your kids or your spouse, then it doesn't matter what you're doing out here to the rest of the world. If your family's falling apart, you've taken vows. God has gifted you these children. So I think that plays into this idea as well of caring for self, caring for family, so that we're available.
It does seem, though, that like if there's a middle line, a balance line, I'm not sure that balance line is where we would think. Like it seems like what the Scripture does paint, though, is it gives us categories for both, and we value both. And yet, I think the line tends to skew more towards loving others sacrificially at the cost to yourself than that maybe the balance we would more naturally.
Interesting. I was going to say culturally, the push is the other way.
No, that's
self-care.
Well, that's what I mean. But I think the Scripture is pointing us not to go 50-50.
Right.
The Scripture is probably going to push us farther towards the side of self-giving.
So culturally, our own culture is pushing us towards it's all about you. Care for yourself. Take care of yourself.
That's right.
Neglect others. I think there's some sects within Christendom that push this other direction. So are we hitting our time frame here?
Yeah, we're getting close.
I think we're over.
Are we?
Did it start at 2:07?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
We'll keep going. All right, let's hit this last one.
Let's do it.
This last one. But what about the Old Testament where God commands the Israelites to destroy their enemies, like the Canaanites?
Is God a moral monster?
Well, that's a good question. This is a tough one, and frankly, this one we're not going to answer very well because this one takes quite a bit to unpack and study, and there's a lot going on there. There's the issues of what's the moral nature of warfare. There's the reality of God judging the Canaanites for some very wicked stuff, including infant sacrifice and human sacrifice, and giving them chances over many years. And there's a lot going on there, and it's kind of messy. But if you're interested in this topic, at least I've studied it just enough to be able to feel comfortable that there's not some huge missing piece here, that the God of the Old Testament is the God of the New Testament. Right. However, if you're curious to really study this one, Is God a Moral Monster by Paul Copan. I haven't read this thing fully, but I've seen him talk on this issue, and I've looked through, especially chapters 15 and 16 are about this issue. So I would commend this book to you, and if you look into it and you want to help us find out more what you learned, give us a book report. That'd be great. But we want to engage with that one. That might be even a topic for another time as we engage with that one. But that one's a little bit more nuanced, and if we take a little more time.
All right. That question also, to me, brings up ideas of...
Keep going. I'm going to look at the time.
Okay, warfare and how we understand even, can you fight in a war as a believer, like as a soldier, morally? Can you fight a battle while also seeking to love your enemy? And I think some of the answer to the question about God calling for total annihilation is related to some of the imagery of warfare through the scriptures as well. So I just said enough there for you to maybe go back and read and look for the spiritual battle that's occurring and how humanity is engaged with it. Maybe I muddied the waters.
Well, it's still good. I like that. I love it.
Hey, so I guess we're wrapping this thing up.
Yeah, we've got about one more minute on that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for tuning in to this session,
whatever it is,
thing of the chopping block. Of course, there's more resources online, tallgrass.church. We hope to come back. Our goal is to do this weekly. We'll see how often we get this out. Let us know if there's topics you want us to cover, questions you have, ways you want to engage. We're excited about it.
Yep.
I guess that's all.
Yeah. This, and I'm not sure I said at the beginning, but this talk was specifically addressing questions from last Sunday's talk, which was called Life in the Upside Down Kingdom, Luke 6. All right. Go watch it if you didn't. See ya.